This is SSN.
Story Studio Network.
I'm Tom Hoppy, and I'm your host of the Most Painful Podcast. I want to thank the audience for its great support for this show and all the feedback you provided. So please keep providing suggestions and feedback to help make this show better. In a past episode, we talked to experts on the challenges of military identity, on the healing journey for veterans who are suffering from chronic pain. Military identity and mindset is important for people to work in a regimental, institutionalized setting. Professional athletes have some of the same identity challenges. In the US, there is a program where professional athletes and veterans work together to learn from each other's experiences. What can veterans learn from professional athletes to help them in their transition? Today on the show, we're joined by Cameron Gaunce, who is a professional athlete and has insight into the identity challenges of athletes. Cameron, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me, Tom.
So Cameron, I just want to start. Maybe you can tell me a little bit about yourself and maybe just highlight some of the identity challenges that pro athletes face.
So as Tom mentioned, my name's Cameron Gaunce. I've been a professional athlete for the past 13 years. I've played hockey both in the NHL and the American Hockey League, spanning across all of North America, essentially. Identity for me has kind of been very linked to being a hockey player. Even before I was a professional athlete, by the age of about 16, I moved away to start playing hockey. And from that point on, it was kind of Cameron Gaunce, the hockey player first, and Cameron Gaunce, the person, kind of came second. And it's how people usually address me. It's usually the first question I get asked. And it's typically how, when I was younger, how I found my self-worth was how well I was playing or how far I was progressing in my career. If I was doing better in my job, it meant I was doing better in life. And that's a problem with a lot of athletes. And it's something that a lot of them struggle with during and after their careers. How do they then find their self-worth and their identity if what they've been so closely linked to is no longer there?
And that's interesting when you say that, because when we think about the military, and we've talked this on many shows, on the past show anyways, with a few experts, that even though people will join the military, say 17, 18, or maybe some of their older years, their mindset has changed. It becomes their part of their life. So from what I'm hearing you say is, with an athlete, you're starting at a very young age.
Yeah.
This is all you're working towards, basically.
Your whole life. Like, I wasn't someone, like, I always dreamed of being a professional hockey player from a young age, but it wasn't something that really came into reality until about 14, 15 years old, when I was kind of being made aware that is a possibility for me. So up until that point, it was part of my life. It wasn't all of it. But then after that point, when I kind of made all my goals were kind of oriented around hockey, my whole life was that. It's a 24-hour job and 365 days a year, just because everything has to be geared towards becoming the best athlete you can. And so when that happens, when everything's geared towards that, that's how everyone else sees you too. If we're out at dinner, I might be ordering something different than other people at the table. And sometimes a question gets brought up, or of course you get pointed out like, oh, you're eating this, or, oh, you're eating that, whereas everyone else gets to do something different. So it's hard to escape it. Like, you have the people around you who kind of know you as a person first and foremost, but even then it's hard for them not to understand and realize that you're going through something completely different than everyone else in your life.
And I think it's that understanding that this program that was in the US, the MVP is called, I believe it is. Yeah, we can talk about that a little later, because sounds like there's some linkages. In the military, it's mission first, self last. That's driven home from day one. In the military, becomes your family and your life. So that's what we focus on. So from what you're saying, it sounds like it's the same in hockey. You're just, that this is your life from a very young age. Sounds like it's very regimental.
Mm-hmm. Very much so. It's learning more and more about the military and kind of what it entails. It does sound very similar, obviously, to much different scales and a much different severity, but at the same time, it's all based around what's best for the team, what's best for your job, what is going to make you the best player you possibly can be, and in turn, what is best for the team. And you're constantly thinking that, like, guys are always playing through injuries, or sometimes have to realize that maybe an injury you have might not be what you should be playing through, because it could hinder the team. And their everyday life, kind of the discipline has to be shown every day. And discipline to a lot of guys, and to myself, is what discipline really is to me is it's what you want most, not what you want right now. And that has to go into your everyday decisions. Like, sometimes, there's things that you might want more at the time, but it's not going to be best for you down the road. And it's something that constantly has to go into your mindset and the decisions you make. And it's what's best for the team and what's best for you as an individual in your sport.
So when you're starting at a young age, working your way up to, say, wanting to be a professional hockey player, is there any break, or is it just constant? Like, this has to be your focus, like uber focused on this task to get to where you want to go?
For me, you have to be uber focused. I'm not the most talented guy when it comes to God-given gifts. So for someone like me, I have to be extremely focused. I need to be thinking about what's going to make me the best player I can possibly be. How am I going to maximize my potential? Because not everyone's potential is the same. Like, we can all put in the same amount of effort. I could say I'm the hardest working person in the world. Doesn't mean I'm going to achieve the same results. But I want to know that when my career is over, I've maximized my potential and done everything I could to be the best player I possibly could have been through my time. Because an athlete's career only lasts so long. Father Time's undefeated. So at some point, doesn't matter how much I put in, I'm going to be reaching diminishing returns. So from a young age, for me, it was always uber focused. Like, yes, sure, there's going to be some things that the greater good might be a bit of a break in terms of maybe mental lapses here and there, trying to spend some time with friends and family, because the mental break might be more important for me at the time, because it would lead to more of a benefit down the line. And then trying to figure out what is going to be best. You have so many decisions to make. Is this trainer better? Is that trainer better? But it's something you always have to be thinking about if you want to maximize your potential.
Kind of the same thing with the military, is what you put in is what you get out of it. We all kind of start at the same starting point, which is basic training, and that's where the mindset and identity sort of changes. And then you just got to kind of, I guess, keep pushing through and try to do the best you can. What happens when you get injured? So in the military, if someone gets injured, I mean, they try to get them better, try to get them back into service, but all of a sudden they're cut. And we find that's where a lot of the struggles are with identity. What happens in the professional sports? I mean, if this is who you are and all of a sudden you get a severe injury in a game, how does that transition look like?
That's a tough question to answer, especially as someone who's still under contract with the team. But every organization's really improved with that. That's something that, unfortunately, the players haven't quite caught up with the organizations. I'm someone who, for example, might play through things that I probably shouldn't. I've played in the past through broken hands, fingers, separated shoulders, broken nose, things of that nature. That it's not what my always thing is. There's a difference between hurt and being injured. Being injured, you can't perform your task. It's too debilitating. Therefore, you're hindering your performance and you're putting your team at a disadvantage. That's injured. That is when there's no question about it. But being hurt is something different. Being hurt is you're playing with pain. You're still able to perform, but it's more of a discomfort. And that's what a lot of players push through. Guys will push through. Like, for instance, when I had my broken hand, I played through it for 2 weeks until we knew for sure it was broken, because I'm not taking myself willingly out of the lineup knowing that I'm probably going to be replaced, and then it's going to be hard to get back into the lineup. And again, like you talked about, your identity then, well, if I'm not a regular everyday player because I got injured, now I can't get back in the lineup, I will really struggle with that. I'll struggle to get back in the lineup, which means sometimes earlier in my career, especially, that would affect my relationships with other people, because all of a sudden I'm down on myself. I'm not sure how other people view me. All of a sudden, if Cameron's not playing, he's a constantly healthy scratch. Obviously, he's not achieving what he should be achieving. He's slacking off, or he isn't doing what's necessary. So obviously he's failing and he's less than when he was before. So that's always what's kind of running through your mind. So if someone gets hurt, you play through it. And unfortunately, that's what a lot of athletes have. And that's just the reality of it, because at the end of the day, we're in a business. And if you can still perform, you still perform. I don't know how many times you're going to ask a professional athlete how you're doing, and they're actually going to be at 100%, because there's always something going on. But as an old coach told me, no one cares. If you've got something going on off the ice, if you've got something going on with your body, if you can still perform, because at the end of the day, if you decide to play, that means you have to play. It's up to you then to get through the game, because nobody cares.
Yeah, and that's when you're saying that kind of strikes some similarities in the military too, where you push through pain. You could be on a career course, you could be out in the field, you could be overseas on a tour. You can't just take time out.
No.
And you got to push through the game in our sense, right? Push through that game and get the mission done. So we look at veterans who suffer with chronic pain, and some of the research out there is showing, these they just become numb to pain because of this. And possibly many are not aware of it because it just becomes like breathing air. It's a natural thing. You just move through and carry on. So is there any, like, in professional athletes, or I guess in your experience, about teaching about awareness and identity, or having understanding of what pain is? But I guess at the end of the day, does it really matter? You got to play, right? So
Yeah, well, in terms of the pain, like, organizations have done, again, they've grown leaps and bounds. Like ours, for instance, they do a really good job of monitoring the players. Sometimes they're the ones that have to make decisions for the players, like, you're not playing tonight, or we're keeping you back because you could risk further injury. I can speak to only the organizations I've been in, and this one in particular does a very good job of that. They really are putting our health first. But unfortunately, sometimes they don't have all the answers because we have to relay to them the pain that we're experiencing. Because yes, sure, an MRI or a X-ray can show something, but sometimes it doesn't show everything. So then it's left to the player to relay the type of pain they're experiencing. For some of us, like you said, talking about people getting used to it, it's just an everyday occurrence, like aches, pains. It's just something that comes with the territory. So you're used to it. You pass it off as nothing. What might be given the scale 1 to 10, what might be a 7 for other people, I'm just kind of used to it at a 3 or 4. Or if it is a 6, I'm just used to having a 6. So I deal with it. I move on. It's just a message that's being sent from my brain. It's not really anything going on. Nothing's going to get worse. It's just going to be an irritant. And then with that, there's also the identity of, you're tough. Like, if you're playing through pain and people are aware you're playing through pain, you want to be seen by your teammates as tough, because then they know that you're willing to do whatever's necessary to help them, to help the team, and kind of putting yourself behind the team, putting your team first and putting yourself second. And that really, typically in hockey dressing rooms at least, gets you pretty far. Like, if you're someone who everyone knows is going to be playing through something, who is quote unquote tough, then usually it gets you a bit of cachet in the room. Now, again, this is where the injured versus hurt comes into play. If you're injured and you're playing and you're hurting the team and potentially hurting yourself, that's not obviously seen as a good thing. And that's the hard thing that guys have to figure out, is that, listen, if you're not playing to your potential and you're not playing to where you should be because of an injury, then you're hurting the team. But if you can play through pain and discomfort and you're hurt and still reach your full potential while experiencing those things, then it's kind of, okay, now he's a tough player. So it's a hard thing for guys to realize, especially at young ages. And it's something that I've struggled with for sure. Like, I've definitely played through things that have hurt my performance. But again, I just thought it was, it's pain. It's just another feeling. I'll get over it. I'll play through it and move on.
yeah, and when you talk about this scale, 1 to 10, and for me, I hate that when they go in the clinic and say, "Well, rate your pain." Well, what do you want me to say? I'm not a tough guy here, but still,
Yeah, I know.
it might be different for everybody because we were used to it. So military people are leaving service. So we found out there's a lot of research out showing that they struggle with transition. Military culture and identity is a big thing. Moving from a very structured culture into a very loose, fluid civilian culture has some clashes, especially with values. And have you heard from people that have left professional sports have some of the same challenges? Because you're already kind of integrated into the civilian life, or are you not really?
Yeah, I think we're more integrated into civilian life than, let's say, military members are. But at the same time, it's a big, big difference because, like you said, structure. From an athlete from a young age, we're told where to be, when to be, how to be for basically our whole life. Like, even in the summers, that's when guys kind of, when they're left to their own devices, they struggle a bit because they don't know, if they don't have people guiding them, sometimes they might overtrain or not train enough. But in season, you're told where to be, when to be, and how to be at all times. So when you stop playing hockey and all of a sudden you don't have someone telling you, well, you need to be here at this time and we're doing this today, and you're, again, left to your own devices, it's scary because you've only known one thing. And it's not, I've been told and heard a few people saying, well, it's their own fault. Like, they should know, but well, no, they can't know better. If they've only been taught one thing and lived one type of life and not prepared for making your own decisions and creating your own life, essentially, it's very hard. We've been, from a young age, again, we're mapped out, our schedule's mapped out for you. when you wake up, you kind of get into that routine of, okay, you're eating at this time, you got to be at the rink for this time, you're working out here, you're skating at this time, and then we're traveling. And then when you travel plans are taken care of for you. All these things are taken care of for you. So then when you're done, you don't have that. So the structure is completely gone from your life. And when that's gone, you're left to kind of think, okay, well, what do I do? And then from that, then the question starts to become a bit more existential. What am I if I'm no longer under this structure as a hockey player? Okay, well, what am I then if I'm not a hockey player now? I'm just Cameron Gaunce? Is that, do I bring value as just Cameron Gaunce and no longer as this hockey player that's been told what to do? Now all of a sudden I have to think for myself. It's a scary and daunting thing for a lot of people who've finished their careers.
And when you say that, I mean, there's many civilians that I've talked to, even my own wife on this, they don't get it. You know, I sit here and I'm talking to you, I get it, because it, you know, I would suggest that it's awareness. And when someone says you should know better, how can you know better? That's like saying you're breathing wrong. You should breathe different. You know, it takes time, it takes awareness. And I know you and I talked about this off online, and something as simple as being on time. You know, in the military, you know, you're taught if you're not 15 minutes early, you're 15 minutes late, and there's serious consequences if you don't show up for work. You're not just, you know, getting a reprimand or whatever. I mean, it could be quite serious. If that's spread into somebody for their entire life, it becomes normal. Mm-hmm. And I get antsy too when I need to get out the door and we're going to be late. I get antsy. I don't know why I get antsy, but now I do because someone brought that awareness to me. So I think the awareness seems to be the key, I would suggest.
Yeah. And when you talk about that, just dealing with other people, I find I've gotten a bit better at it, and understanding that others don't have the same, not the same values, but others haven't had the same experiences I have. So I need to understand that and be a bit more patient with that. Like if my friends, family, or if my wife are not thinking the exact same way I am about certain situations, I need to understand that it's because they've had different life experiences that have led them to these conclusions that what they're doing is correct. And because I'm constantly around like-minded individuals, always around hockey players, because that's my job, I play on a team, even the staff members, either they've played or if they've been around the game for years, whether it's media, whether it's our athletic therapists, whether it's our coaches, they've all been ingrained in the game. So it's all kind of like-minded. And when you leave that space and all of a sudden you're communicating, or just like you said, timing, punctuality, it's very different. So I need to have, it's hard to realize that I need to maybe have a bit more patience or a bit more understanding, a bit more empathy to the experiences that they've had in their life, because I'm not surrounded by guys who have all had similar experiences to me.
Yeah. So we're talking, I mean, this is your life 24/7, not an 8-hour job where you can switch off at the end of the day. And I think that's where the difference comes in. So there seems to be lots of similarities. Now, you had talked to me offline about the program in the US, MVP, I think it's called, right? Maybe you can just touch on that for about a minute or so.
Sure. So after we got to talking for the first time, I kind of did a bit of research into it. And there's an organization out here called MVP, Merging Veterans and Players and Professional Athletes. And what it does is we get together. Essentially, they do every Wednesday. They get together, in Los Angeles. Get together, you do a workout for about 30 minutes. And then afterwards, you kind of get together in a bit of almost like a circle. And then you just discuss things that are going on in your life. There's a lot of commonalities as I've sat through a few of the sessions myself. And there's a lot of commonalities between what veterans are going through and what athletes are going through when the uniform comes off. Essentially, what their goal is to help just build that community, build that network for all these athletes and veterans who are maybe experiencing a tough time finishing their careers, taking the uniform off, and understanding that there's others who are going through the same thing as them. And they've been doing this for many years. They've got, I believe, 6 to 8 different chapters all across the country, and they seem to do great work. I've been there for a couple sessions. I wanted to learn more about it. And also I feel like it's helped a bit hearing a lot of other people talk about some of the struggles they're going through. I can understand them and empathize what they're going through, and kind of realize that others are going through similar situations, and some have been through much more than I have, and understanding that they've been able to cope and how they did. And I learned a few things from it.
Yeah. So it sounds like it's bringing awareness, understanding. Yeah. I mean, that's similar to the heli hike we did here in Whistler just this summer. The intent of that was to bring some awareness to veterans. And it was interesting because, a veteran said that, I've transitioned, but they were put in a competitive position, and they reverted back to the military mindset without even realizing it. But the difference was they were aware of it this time because they had the awareness before. So I think those kind of things are helpful. Yeah, so I think I could probably talk another hour on this, Cameron. Really easy.
Anytime. I'm glad to come back.
That's one thing we do get from the audience is they say, geez, you guys are just getting into it, and now you gotta end it. But we'll definitely do a follow-up show for this, like some of the other ones that we've had. So I really do appreciate your insight, and I do see some similarities with professional athletes and hockey, and it'd be good to know more about that program that's in the States, because it sounds like a great idea to help people.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me on. And like you said, there's a lot of commonalities. I'm really starting to learn a lot more about the military community, and I was already very respectful of them and had a lot of respect for them, but now it's even more so learning about some of the trials and tribulations everyone has to go through in that life.
Well, thanks very much, Cameron, for being on the show. For our audience, if you have any feedback about the show or you want more information on chronic pain, you can visit our website at veteranschronicpain.ca or follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Chronic Pain COE and on Instagram at Chronic Pain _COE. Thanks again, Cameron. And to our audience, stay healthy and keep hope alive. Thank you.
The Most Painful Podcast is produced for the Chronic Pain Center of Excellence by Story Studio Network and Eye Contact Productions.